I'd like you to talk a little bit, on any aspect of other use cases you see for AI enablement in the world of finance and accounting professionals. And I know in your company, you're starting to step back and look at how AI could be applied for both innovation and transformation. I know I'm going to build on some examples of other use cases in our discussions, but just for you to have a chance to talk about how you look at the world of invoice digitization and workflow very specifically, because the reality in ourselves, in our company, the invoices, the accounts payable, the streamlining, the tracking. So I'm really curious to hear about where you're heading within your business. I mean, this is really exciting.
Yes, thanks. This is the basic foundation of what we're trying to change in the accounting team environment. The current practice in most accounting teams is very paper-based, manual. Information is very delayed. Everyone still does month-end well after month-end is closed. Making decisions around getting the ability to have real-time information around what has gone on already in the company. I know later on you're going to talk about the revenue side of that problem, but it's as equally challenging for the CFO and the accounting team to manage the expenses. I mean, there's really just two flows of cash that comes in and it goes out. Making sure that it doesn't go out the wrong way to the wrong people is a pretty critical business function. And there's tons of opportunity for AI to come in and speed that up. In our case, we're adding it into the digitization process of the invoice in order to speed up the workflow, in order to get that real-time data point. An invoice is someone made a purchase decision, you want to know right away. So you can create a purchase order, but then you want to be able to take that purchase order and, let's say, link it back to a budget, or you want to, or it should be, and now you'd have to do it manually, or you want to have that the invoice appear right away. So the moment that invoice has been generated by the vendor and sent to you, you want to be able to see it. Right now, there's a big, huge void between the accounting software and the physical decision to make a purchase and to receive something. There's a lot of steps along the way in between, and our platform bridges that gap, and we're trying to do that in a faster, more efficient way as we move along. And so for us, the next generation of digitization has to be through an intelligent process that doesn't just digitize it, but for example, receipts are a really good example of that. When you're capturing credit card or reimbursement receipts, they're very disjointed. You don't necessarily capture all of the vendors. Very unlikely you capture all the vendors you're buying from in your accounting software. So using an AI a tool and technology to make sure you don't have the same receipt being processed twice. It's very difficult even in the high, especially the mid-market, because the products like Concur, for example, they have some of this stuff built in, and I'm not clear if they're using AI properties, but they probably aren't. And so they've gone and built all these manual rules, which then means you have to spend a lot of money to buy Concur, and so it's out of reach for a lot of the market, especially in Canada. So we're really trying to bring that democratization of that efficiency and digitization to the mid-market. And one of the ways we know that that's going to work best is through an AI technology in the digitization process, and then later on bringing in an AI technology that looks at that analyzes your spend as you're spending it. And alerts people, alerts the CFO that something is either an anomaly, it's not what you're expecting, it's out of budget, something is trending the wrong direction. That sort of stuff AI can play a role in. And then of course the final piece, because the invoice is the backup documentation for the transactions in your business, is to automate that audit, so that it can be done, and that's going to require an AI technology to do audits. Otherwise, it would take too long and be too complex. But to get an AI technology tool that can come in and automate that AP audit would be phenomenal for bringing that cost down and providing security all throughout the whole year for the CFO that things are being done legitimately. There's so many examples of fraudulent behavior on spending. We have one recently now in the news. Our own provincial government, our parliament, or provincial parliament. I don't know if you've heard about this one, Cindy, where there's a section of that parliament that they're not managing and watching the spend, and now there are two people on who have been suspended from work, and they're pretty high up in the food chain, and now there's a big, huge controversy around it. And this is all around the fact that these people were inappropriately using funds, or potentially inappropriately using funds, and nobody was able to see it, watch it, and control it. And if there had been an AI tool in place within their accounting system, they would have picked up on some of these activities sooner, and it would have taken the human bias out of monitoring it and made it much more generic. And this looks wrong. Send it off to the Auditor General or whoever is the governing body for that group. So that's just one recent example, but there's constantly stuff coming up in the news where somebody absconded with some money here or fraudulently did something. And I think the way to really close that behavior is through an AI, not a person who can be corrupted or bribed, but an AI technology that is unbiased and can be monitoring all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example, and I was aware of some of the developments, and you're right, the opportunity for anomaly detection, but then also to have, the risk mitigation structures to really deal with the so what's, right? So people can put their time into making process improvements, and obviously all of that resourcing capacity that gets re-leveraged can be put to, new types of jobs, etc. I do think that, there's an opportunity for financial people in county, because I think if you get into this pretty deep over time, there'll be a loss of certain jobs, but then there'll be a set of new jobs required, right? We should start thinking through the new use cases, the new experiences as we continue to evolve and transform how we're operating. So, yeah, it's amazing how much stuff this can crunch. But again, one of the things that's always interesting in the invoice digitization and workflow world is that they are very specific, requirements to respond to, right? In terms of relationships. So it's very concrete in many ways in terms of the data that can be scanned and then do the sense making against. So it's although fraudulent invoices, and anomalies, we could have probably a good conversation on that front.
Yes, the other one I wanted to just mention before we move to the next question is a more practical application for a CFO and their team. Is just if you've got employees who are, if you've somebody who moves out of your department, a new person comes in, it's really challenging in the world of accounting to pick up where someone left off when it comes to accounts payable. And the AI technology available to us today, and how we're intending to deploy it into our platform, is to make it easier for a new person to step in. And the behavior, accounting is very standardized, and it needs to be the same thing every time. So you want to say if this vendor invoice normally gets coded to this expense account, you don't want someone new coming in and putting in a different expense account. And really it's AI technology that's going to make it possible. We've already got a light version of it in our platform that we call smart coding, that allows the system to look back at what was done with that invoice and that by that individual in the past. But our next version of it is to say, sir, what is the trend? What happens normally with this vendor? And give the user some options to say which one is it this time, and apply the right one so that they can learn faster and transition into their role faster.
Well, let's make sure we do another session here, and let's get a software demonstration. I think this is really encouraging, and it's nothing like innovation in very practical worlds. In terms of, I'm going to move to the next discussion here, and I think we're both building on this one, but how can improved intelligent systems enable better decision making and improve an accountant's role? Because obviously you're a change agent, you're an innovator, you've got a major platform, a major footprint now, you're extending the AI enablement, which is really exciting, so very much a trailblazer. But how do you think it's going to impact the accountant's role? Are there things that you can see that are important for them to really be more alert to right now? Obviously, the foundational point we talked about earlier is start becoming educated on what this means and learning the terms. But what else do you see?
I think for the accountant's role, it is definitely evolving from what used to be a data collection and entry type function and has moved more into a strategic controller of the cash, or strategic supplier of the accurate data for decision making elsewhere in the organization. I mean, the accountants don't do the spending for the most part, and they don't just generally make the decisions either, unless you're at that CFO level or higher level in finance. But they now will become more of the stewards of the books, or the stewards of the process in making sure that it's done properly, it's accurate, it's timely, and that puts the right information in front of the decision makers sooner. And the world is moving at such a pace, and everything, especially in tech, it's just faster and faster and faster. And if you're behind a little bit, then you have a disadvantage. And so the accounting, certainly that's been the theme in the various CPA events I've been at and meetings and some that I've spoken at, that everyone is quite aware of the fact that this change is coming, and it is one from moving from a passive data entry type role into a strategic process management role.
Are there enough training programs in the certification that have evolved sufficiently enough to get that kind of behavior going? It also attracts a different kind of a profile as well, in terms of recruitment as well, potentially.
I think it is certainly from a CPA perspective, that is the type of person that I've seen coming up the line from younger CPAs that I've interacted with. You know, they are expected. They're the smartphone generation. They expect everything to kind of be easier, smoother, better user interface. They don't want to be. They have more altruistic views of the world and their life, and they don't want to be sitting at a desk keying data into a machine all day long. So I do think it actually fits nicely with the generation that's coming up. And then the new Canadian CPA process is quite a bit different than when I took it. I think they've done a good job of merging them, and they definitely have been moving their strategic conferences and such are all moving in the direction of technology and becoming aware of it, learning about AI and the new technologies that are becoming available to the accountant as a tool.
That's exciting. You start thinking about, you think about financial people becoming ambassadors, right? Like we've seen the evolution in marketing people, right? And really the process ambassador and, maybe also the cheerleader and I think kind of the opportunity to drive more energy. So we're not it's always so clinical, right? And these multiple feedback loops. So yeah, I can only imagine all these alert notification opportunities that they can also add into the interfaces. It's going to be a fun time. Hopefully we make it fun on these alerts. I'm going to talk a little bit now about PayPal. I'm not going to spend too much, but I think PayPal is always really interesting because they've always been very much a leader in terms of electronic payments, and obviously they've been working with AI and anomaly detection to flag risks for quite some time. So I think it's more of an example of a company. If you were in a large organization, you wanted to do some benchmarking, I would definitely for sure recommend you take a look at PayPal. They've built very sophisticated processes in terms of distinguishing good customers from bad customers. Obviously, they're collecting a lot of data, not only just third-party data, but a lot of these organizations, because they can collect the World Wide Web and scrape the World Wide Web, they can actually find patterns and classify and label. Obviously, because our laws haven't evolved in some of these areas, and some areas in terms of privacy of what can be collected and not, there's a lot of creativity that's going on, and you can be rest assured that PayPal is pretty deep into the innovation side of cracking down on sales of illegal products or deceptive merchants, but also very progressive in leveraging AI models for optimizing operations. So just one that we wanted to highlight because a lot of the innovation on outlier and anomaly detection, they've been working very hard. So they've cracked a lot of the, I'd call it, innovation curves in this area. The next area, and Catherine's going to build on this because I know, Catherine, you're starting to do some R&D thinking on claim auditing as well. But this area is interesting just because of the number of expense claims and obviously doing that anomaly detection and flagging any questionable claims. And there are a number of emerging companies that are using AI in that area. One would be AppZen in California. We did a review on their product a few weeks ago. It's getting quite a bit of publicity. I think your point on Concur is a very good one. I think there's going to be a lot of low-cost alternatives that are highly mobile-centric and automatically do the checks and balancing. And you're right, in terms of this generation, we absolutely don't have, I say we because I'm one of these Generation X wannabes, a little bit further along, but the point being is that, the sense-making technology, everybody's really, I think, seeing value in the claim auditing side. So, Catherine, what are your thoughts in terms of reading receipts and driving all compliance integration points there?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting space and work. As I said, we're just about to add this into our platform so that you can have it all built into one. It's definitely still a big problem. The general consensus of the customer base we have, as well as the ones we talk to as prospects, they still have the companies that are out there have still not solved this problem, still not put in a, and probably because mostly it's not AI driven, it's mostly technology, based technology driven, and so it's an expensive way to do it. And you do need to be able to have checks and balances in there. There's a lot of complexity around employee expenses or credit card receipt management. And making sure that those things are accurate is very, very challenging. So this is the next big fish we're trying to fry in our system. So we'll let you know in a few months how that launches. But it's definitely, our customers are eagerly waiting for us to solve it for them. They have not found the technologies on the marketplace today to either be affordable and accurate, and really solve this anomaly piece, as well as finding a way to take AI and gamification and put those two together, so that the employees who are not in accounting, who are the ones spending all this money, are enjoying the process of sending that data back to accounting and not looking at it like a pain in the rear end. I was going to say something else.
That's okay. I was going to say pain in the butt. Yeah, got it. Well, I look forward to putting Beanworks front and center in this space. I think the fact that you're always very sensitive to simplicity, which means elegance in UI, but also the rigor. And you're right, some of these nuts technology can absolutely drive value. And, it's going to be a much simpler world and a lot of really outdated workflow processes. And, so it's all going to be based on smart user design and also respecting the rules and compliance requirements of the different industries and organizations, and speeding things up.
The other thing, Cindy, I just wanted to mention on this topic is just every industry that's new comes in and it's like little pieces of the puzzle in separate, like even AppSend, it only does one thing. And I've had a couple of different customers look at the whole SaaS space and cloud space and say sometimes you get overwhelmed with too many technologies, and it can be a death by a thousand SaaS cuts. And this is sort of the beginning of AI, so we're going to do the same thing, where there's this piece will do that, and this piece will do this. Where AI, I think, really needs to be baked into everything, so that it's baked into an existing platform. So whether it's a sales analytics tool or a finance forecasting tool or an expense app like ours, a whole spending platform management tool that has the AI baked in. But if I have to keep adding, then the CFO now has, even in our own company, we're fully cloud. We have a lot of technologies, and we probably have 25 different software as a service products that we tie together to make it all work. And none of them have AI in them yet. So now we're getting AI products we have to put on top of our products. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that gets consolidated as well over time in this new space.
Yeah, I think that's a very astute observation. The amount of software market acquisition M&A activity is going to be pretty fierce, or there's also going to be a big cleansing, right, in terms of survivability, because the apps are too narrow. And I like your analogy of a death by 1,000 cuts with SaaS. And so it's always good to have the humor. Just going to move to talk a little bit about forecasting accuracy and kind of what's been happening in the market with AI. Typically in the past in finance, if those of you that are CFOs on the line or versus the accounting side per se, getting really clear on the growth side of where the organization is going to land, so all that resource utilization and those cost of operations can be fulfilled, and obviously to ensure that the boards and the senior leaders, especially if you're publicly traded, aren't taking a risk on an inaccurate forecast. And we put a tremendous amount of effort and time and reviews into that, and this is an area where AI is speeding up significantly forecasting enablement. It's a new space in the market. It's obviously hitting the sales organizations. It's called guided AI selling. It's kind of the venture capital classification. So you'll start to see companies in the market where I think we're the only one in Canada doing guided AI selling. And the use case we're solving is saying, why are we spending so much time every single month with the sales leaders coming together and revalidating every single sales cycle, every single opportunity to try and get an accurate forecast? Bottom line, AI can do a lot of the sense making with scenarios and simulations and basically advise you whether you're going to get there or not. Obviously, it's dependent on data. So if you've got good practices with your data, about 60% of it being good going into your CRM, AI can basically start to look at the trajectory, the growth, external or internal trends, and start doing that sense making. So, there's nothing more threatening to a CFO. I know they have their discounting methods. They get the forecast from the CRO, and then they discount based on maybe prior history. But a lot of that work effort can be mitigated with some of these advanced technologies. So what we've learned is if you install them over time, they keep learning and learning and learning, and you can move companies from accuracy and forecasting from 85% literally to 95% on any time scenario simulation. So it's an interesting space. Obviously, it's predicated on good data, some good practices, but boy, oh boy, can we start to move people into different, I'd call it, effort of where they're spending their time. So that's an area I think that CFOs, have the opportunity to lead in more on intelligent forecasting, enablement infrastructure that can really make their lives easier. It also impacts the pricing areas of organizations where, in terms of discounts, where so often sales resources, if they're in a larger company, have to go to a pricing team for a pricing exception. A lot of those roles can be eliminated because the AI can automatically, in real time, hold the course. And so we will start to see these levers. And you don't even need rules. A lot of this can pick up the insights of what correlates to a win or an industry or that particular mix, what the most optimal threshold is, as well as this is kind of the marginal area that you can stay within. So a lot of creativity, again, on compression of workflows. So forecasting accuracy is an interesting area. I'm not going to spend too much time in a commercial. I just want to let you know that if you're not familiar with the area, please reach out to us. We'd love to share our software, give you the confidence. It overlays with Salesforce, and we have some major accounts that are now reinvesting that precious time and not having to worry so much in the past. It also gives you the visibility in terms of data completeness, so you can move your adoption cycles along, which has always been an ongoing issue within the CRM arena. The net on here is, I've already mentioned, the 95% on a deal-by-deal basis. I was yesterday on the phone with a chap, Catherine, called Jim Dickey. I mentioned, I think, to him, we were planning for this, and Jim's just finished some research. He was the head of CSO Insights, and they are pretty well one of the premier researchers on the evolution and the future of sales and the linkages to innovation and AI and financial matters. But the key thing that he's come out of their research is that the leaders in this space are all seeing incredible returns. And so, a lot of this is getting the message out. And to your earlier point, Catherine, is that, really be thoughtful about what use case you're trying to solve, and, can you afford that additional overlay or not? And but as the market matures, we'll start to, see solutions like ours and yours and others come together, because at the end of the day, people are going to want some simplicity and utility.